What's up, everybody? It's Greg Burge with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur, and we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. John Hubbard to us. Thank you so much, John, for coming on board. How are you?
Oh, very well. Thank you, Greg. And thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a fan of the show.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. So John and I talked a little bit this weekend before we recorded. And he's like, man, I've been watching. It's been great. So I'm always happy to bring on someone that's actually been watching the show and is a fan. So
Yes.
For those of you that don't know who John is, let me go and introduce him. John Hubbard is a strategic advisor and business coach specializing in customer-led marketing. I love talking about marketing. You guys know this. He is the creator of an online course, Get Better Testimonials, and has been producing video marketing for companies including Nike, Ford, Honda, Oakley, BHP, and dozens of others around the world for more than 20 years. John helps businesses market strategically by placing customer stories at the most crucial points of the marketing funnel in order to evoke an emotional connection with the target audience's situation, thus reducing or eliminating the need for aggressive sales tactics. Man, I love this. I love the power of stories, right? And like a customer story, because you can find so much in relation when you hear a really good customer story, and then another client, almost always can find something, some piece of it that they can be like, that's just like me, right? And then the emotion moves them. Before you know it, they're like, I got to get in on this. I got to click and find out more, and it just drives that process of the funnel.
Yeah.
So no, I love
Absolutely.
it. So let's talk. Let's get dirty on some marketing.
Absolutely. Yes, I couldn't agree more. What you said there pretty well sums up the whole thing, and it's really comes down to this: the principle of show not tell. It's just easier.
Yeah.
If you can just show the result and show that it works, it's so much easier than saying, "Hey, just take my word for it." You know. But anyway, I'm probably leaping ahead there. But launch in anywhere you would like, Greg.
Yeah, no, you're perfect, man. So you've been doing this for 20 years. You've been doing marketing for 20 years. I assume it didn't start off like with doing this kind of high level. How'd you crack the code on like utilizing customer stories and testimonials and getting all that information in order to see that it was driving even more production and sales at a more efficient way?
Yeah, it was funny. I started back in 2002, got plucked out of film school by an agency that did work for a lot of the automotive companies and so on. So Ford was the very first job that I worked on, and it was at a motor show, and it was getting vox pops. So what they would do is they were releasing a new car model, and they were vox popping, which is just doing a little short interview with people and their reaction to this car. And this was my first day on the job. I was a runner, so be seen, not heard kind of thing. And I brought my camera along because I wanted to film I was a big fan of the show Top Gear at the time, Jeremy Clarkson and so on. And I wanted to show how good a cameraman that I was and film the cars and so on. So I said to the producer, why are we interviewing the people and not showing the cars? And he said to me, he kind of grunted at me, because social proof trumps features and benefits. Didn't know what either of those things meant. So I went back and Googled what social proof meant. And so that was my first experience of just even learning what that was. And then 10 years down the track, I launched my own business. I was co-founder of a company called Your Success Australia, which was teaching very low risk property investment to everyday Australians, and spent a ton of money putting this course together, 9 months, 20 odd grand to a marketing agency to build websites and logos and brochures and all this kind of stuff. Launched it, no sales. I think we got 6 sales, one of them refunded. So it was just, we were devastated. And so I went back to what I know, which was customer, what they would call the big companies were calling it user-driven content. I now call it customer-led marketing. So I just went back, put a beta group together of the people that we had, in our orbit, and got some before testimonials, took them through the course content, got after testimonials, and then we relaunched again. We cut those back to back into a video, relaunched again, And we got 30 sales on the second time round at $2,400 each, which was enough for us to kick off that business and get us going. So that's kind of the journey that I've been on to get here. And there was a few parts, obviously, that I've skipped over in between. But yeah, that's how I got here.
Now, that's awesome. That's awesome. I like the whole story of like just social proof is.
Yes.
It is. I mean,
What's
he's
that?
right. Yeah, no, he's absolutely right. Social proof is a great way just to get buy-in, like kind of the initial buy-in, because everyone wants to do what everyone else is doing, right? It's just like we
Yeah.
want to be part of the club, part of the group.
It is. It's safety in the herd. So it's such a powerful thing. And I was because I was from the agency land and kind of branding world and all of that kind of stuff. When it came to selling online, I really didn't know any of the direct response type of marketing stuff that I needed to know to be able to sell online, like sales, letters and sales videos and product launches and all of that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
really just reverting back to what I know and just showing the customers results was a bit of a shortcut for me because I was a terrible copywriter. And
Mhm.
we ended up selling over $1 million of that course without actually hiring a professional copywriter. It was great when we did hire a professional copywriter. We got another boost, but we were able to basically run that business without professional copy, which is a big thing when you're selling online.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. So I've done some VSLs, I've done training and marketing, and not to be dangerous. Like I'm not. Um, I spent enough time reading some Seth Godin here and there, and
Mm,
to keep a bridge of it, just so I can be dangerous, right?
yep.
Now, for your marketing, for your so like let's say a VSL. Let's break down a VSL real quick. So
Mm,
for most people, I would assume most people on this audience know what a VSL is. How would you break down like if you're like, let's say you're doing it for an insurance, right?
mm.
Because I could kind of go over what I've done before and worked in past, but how would you implement client testimonials into an actual VSL, the VSL?
Yeah. So I think if I was to take if I just take the testimonial itself for a moment, the
Mhm.
way I think about it is kind of like a VSL. So I think of it as its own little conversion tool in the same way that a webinar or a VSL would be a conversion tool.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm thinking about where it's going to be used. So if it was used, say, for instance, on a in a VSL, that might be further down the customer journey. So if you think of where someone comes into your world, what we would call top of the funnel, so they visit you for the first time, or maybe they're reacquainting themselves with you. They come to a landing page, let's say for a lead magnet or something, or an event or something like that, or your service, your web
Mhm.
page.
Mhm.
So that's what we would call top of funnel. So top of funnel, they're not willing to give you that much time and attention yet because they just don't know you. You're one person competing for their attention amongst thousands of other things on the internet that are also competing for their attention. So, where we're using it there, we treat it differently. So, we treat it almost like an ad, which we would also use at the top of funnel. So, an ad is grab their attention, so a big hook, get them interested in the opportunity, try and prove that it's possible for them. So they're the kind of three things that you would hit. And that's typically what I'm designing a little short testimonial to do.
Yeah.
If it was for a VSL or a webinar or something like that, and they're all already in your world, so they've decided to invest a little bit of time with you, so they're further down that customer journey, further down the funnel, then I would probably start to think about using it as a demonstration story. So actually demonstrating how your product has worked. So if you have a premise, for instance, that you talk about, so you come out the gate with a big premise of the way people should do something,
Mhm.
and then you would literally just say, let me give you an example. I was working with a client recently, and then what you would want to do then is have that story describe the audience's problem.
Yeah.
So essentially what you're doing is you're looking for the overlap between your customer story and the audience's story. So while they're listening to that, they're going, yeah, I have that problem. Yeah, I have that problem. And then when you do the what we would call the resolution and reward of the problem, so essentially a problem is tension, the solution is resolution. So we have the resolution of that problem, and then they go, yeah, that's what I want. Exactly. So they're attracted to that, and then you would. In effect, what you're doing there is you're demonstrating how the product worked. So the definition is at the top of the funnel, we don't really demonstrate. All we do is get them excited. It's just a hook, getting them excited and to get them to the next stage.
Yeah.
Middle of funnel, we start to demonstrate. And then down the bottom of the funnel, where people are starting to think about taking a call, for instance, then what we do is we show emotional stories, and you can use longer form customer stories there. We call those transformation stories, because buying decisions are made on emotion. So what you could do, for instance, if you've got a sales call and someone books on Calendly or something like that, on the thank you page, you could start showing those emotional stories of where people had this massive transformation. Or even you might email them before the call and say, hey, listen, I thought of you because I was working with this client, in such and such, and they had the exact same problem as you. Here's a little case study we made of them. So that they're the kind of different ways that you might use the different types of customer stories.
I like it. I think that's awesome. So what's a great way, or what's a recommendation that you would give to somebody who's not really done client testimonials like that, and how to procure them in a better way, more efficiently?
Yeah, well, the first part is I work with a lot of people. A lot of people come to me and they've got a long list of results. They just haven't been collecting them in any kind of systematic way. And what I tend to find when I scratch the surface a little bit is nearly always it's just the hesitancy around reaching out. They're worried they're going to impose on their client if they ask for a video testimonial, or run into an awkward conversation. And most of the time, that's because of the system they've got in place of collecting the testimonials. So they say, something along the lines of, hey, Greg, can you give me a video testimonial? And if you get a request like that, you kind of, you might say yes because you want to help, but you immediately think, oh, what do they want? What's going to help them? I hope I don't say the wrong thing. And, so you're putting all of this onus of responsibility on me to come up with what to say. So it is actually a burden. And what tends to happen is people say yes, and this is the most common thing happens. And then week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks goes by, no testimonial. So the number one thing you need to do to start with is just make it easy for your client to come to say yes. And so the easiest way to do that is to have an interview. So you take all the onus of responsibility off the client to come up with what to say. You know what to say, and you just ask them the questions, they answer. And the beauty of that too is it makes it a lot easier for you to reach out, because you're not feeling like you're imposing on them. It is easy for them to give the testimonial, and they can just say yes. The other thing I would do is there's a couple of little things that I would have in their request that, again, just make it a little bit easier for them to say yes. So I would say, for instance, look, if the timing's not right, I completely understand. No explanation is necessary. Just put next time in the subject line, for instance. So that's a way of just giving them an easy off ramp, because you don't want to put everything on the line for one testimonial. And the chances are, who knows what's going on in their world at the moment. They might have stuff going on at home, or deadlines, or whatever. So you don't want to put everything on the line for it. Give them an easy out. But the big benefit of that is, what I've found is just the psychological shift for people. They send out a lot more testimonials when they don't feel like they're imposing on the client.
That's also true. Yeah. No, I love the idea of actually doing an interview, because you can actually splice that and you ask a lot of questions. You could get a lot of content with a 5 or 10 interview.
Yes.
You can get a lot of content.
Absolutely.
So,
And it really comes across as a nice, natural, authentic story too, because the other problem people get is they get a yes, and they get the testimonial come in, and then they look at it and they go, oh man, it's horrible. Like, and you've kind of missed that opportunity. I had someone say that to me just a couple of days ago. And the problem again is often they're trying to help, but they're just not experts at giving testimonials. So they might have some notes off to the side, and they're constantly going like this, and looking off to the side. And because they've pre-prepared and they're not professional actors, they can't, even if they memorize, it comes across as wooden and inauthentic, and it just doesn't really do you justice. But if it's an interview,
and I'm just
then
asking the questions.
just natural. Yeah, you're just answering the question.
And you just come off way more natural, because you're just recalling back how the process went for you. You're just recalling the historical data.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Absolutely.
that's so true. Psychologically, that makes a lot of sense too. I'm like, that's really smart. Like,
It's a bit of a manual way, but it's just the best way to do it. And there's lots of software and so on that's come out in recent years where people can, go and you've got a pre-recorded question and then they record the answers. And when I saw that came out originally, I thought, oh, this is brilliant. And then we tried it. We actually used a technique like we've got a bunch of incentives that we use to batch collect testimonials, which I'm happy to go through with your audience. But we did this batch technique. We had, I think, about 30, I think it was more actually, people sign up and do these testimonials. And then we looked through the results and they were terrible. Like there was maybe 3 to 5 of them that were could be used as is, and then a lot of other ones we were just going to take snippets because same problem. It just wasn't a conversation, and we couldn't get it, naturally out of their mouth. It sounded very wooden and inauthentic.
Mm. So basically, doing it the old-fashioned way was reign supreme.
Tends to work, yeah. And for a test, the way that most of the time we're using them, like top of funnel, like the landing pages and the opt-ins and all of that kind of stuff, even for events, is they only need to be short. Because remember, the people coming into your world for the first time or reacquainting themselves with you, they're not willing to give you too much attention. So you just want to have a little short testimonial under a minute. Ideally, around 40 seconds is great. Mm. And so that really then just comes down to a couple of sound bites, and which is really just a nice before picture. So what was the problem or the challenge or the roadblock that they faced before? Then the resolution to that tension, and saying, okay, now I have this new life, and ideally a quantifiable result in there, and just some kind of number that we can quantify how that, the transformation. And then, so we've got tension and resolution, and then we would drop in the endorsement. I would highly recommend, working with Greg because X, Y, Z. And I can run through some kind of examples of that too, because I understand it's much easier to see the video than, or I haven't got the video, but it's much easier to see one than it is for me to describe it. But it's essentially just before picture, after picture, and then the endorsement is really the 3 sound bites that we need. And we can craft our questions very effectively get those sound bites. There's ways that we use in telly, for instance, in television interviews, where we take 2 bites at the question. So we'll have an open-ended question and then a summary question. And then the summary question is what narrows in on that little piece of content that we're really after, that we just need a clean sound bite of.
Yeah. So, and you could, if you want to, you can go ahead and run through, like you were just saying, you can run through a little bit of what this would look like or sound like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, that's brilliant, because think about it like this. So for those the audience that are listening or watching, I know that across the board in the insurance industry, this is not really done very well, not at a high level. But how simple would it be to reach back out to your client after you sell them? It could be a week later. Like you could literally like have an email funnel that's automatically created. Hey, how's everything going with your policy? I wanted to check in. Also, I'd love to do an interview with you. And just kind of talk about the experience it was working with me, and record it for other people that are interested. Like, would you be willing to? If not, no worries. You can put next time, like what you said, like give them an out. And if you would, just respond back that you're game, and we'll schedule something that works for both of us, right?
Yeah.
Something simple, something easy. You don't have to be like testimonials, but like, hey, I want to record an interview and have a conversation that we could, do this, that, the other. That way it even eases their attention a little bit more. So they don't even think like, oh, I got to say something specific. Like I'm just going to interview you, right? Make it as natural and candid as possible, because that's what's going to speak to people when they speak authentically, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's the key. Is you want them to be as authentic as possible.
You do. And there's the thing about an interview is there's a million threads that a conversation can go down. So knowing in advance what your audience's, the fears and the pains and the desires are, and what's going to resonate with your audience is key, because then you can just direct the conversation to those areas. So we get the exact sound bites we need, but it's coming very naturally out of their mouth because it's their story. It's just the part of their story that overlaps with our audience's story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. So I'll give you what I can do, Greg, is I'll give you a couple of examples of what a finished testimonial might sound like, just with the little short testimonial with that before and after picture,
Mhm.
and then I can talk you through how you would ask those questions if you would like to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, perfect. So this is one of my students did for a mortgage broker. She's starting to go out and do testimonials for other businesses. So the before picture, if this is how the testimonial started. So this was a young guy was getting their first home loan. And they'd gone to the bank, had a few problems, and then gone with this mortgage broker who the testimonial was for. So the testimonial started. He said, "We were saving for a loan for over 3 years. We'd go to the bank and they'd say our deposit wasn't enough. And then we'd go away, save some more, and then we'd come back and they'd say, now that wasn't enough too." And then so we go, that's the before picture. So that's setting up the tension. And then the after picture was our experience with mortgage choice has been amazing. We now have our dream home in a really good area that we've always wanted to live in. So that's the after picture. So we've gone tension and resolution. And then comes the endorsement. I would highly recommend working with Billy from Mortgage Choice. He took all the stress off our shoulders and got us across the line into our first home. So that's just a typical example of how a little short testimonial is a tiny little mini story, but
Mhm.
is so much more powerful than just saying, "Oh, Billy's a great guy. You should work with Mortgage Choice," which
Yeah.
is really just an empty platitude. Because if I'm someone that's going for my first home and I hear this young guy saying, "Hey, I went to the bank and I had these problems," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, we've been to the bank and we had a similar experience," and then now they've taken all the stress off my shoulders and got us into our first home where we always wanted to live. That's exactly where I want to be. So he's already in where I want to be. It's just it gets the audience to lean forward, and that's the power of really tapping into the conversation that's already taking place in that prospect's mind, in the audience's mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm sitting here thinking about like, so I ran some business today. I've had 2 sales today so far. So I'm thinking about it like, man, there was one sale that I had this morning where the guy, he was legitimately like excited when we got done because he didn't think he was going to get approved because he had previous medical conditions. And I was like, I think just based off of the underwriting and everything, I think we can still get you approved with this specific policy. He's like, I don't know. Like I've had other people deny me. And I was like, I'm pretty good at what I do. Like, I think I'll be able to take care of you, you know? And so he was like, all right, let's do it.
Great
And
testimonial.
I got
Yeah.
him approved. He was like,
Yeah.
"Man, that's so awesome." He was like so excited, you know?
Yes.
And so I'm like, dude, I could probably and he was really dope too. He was like we set up another appointment for next week where I'm gonna help him with something else. And he was really just a cool guy when we got done. He was like, "Man, how long you been doing this?" I was like, "Oh, I've been doing
Mm.
about 6 years." He was like, "Dude, you're really good at this." I was like, "Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you." It's like I pride
Yes.
myself in trying to like really serve clients. But now I'm like, dude, I should get a testimony from him and just ask
Yeah.
some questions, get that interview done, and then make those snippets. And
Absolutely right. And that would be a perfect one to use a little sentence starter too. So the way we would typically ask a question like that is we would give an open-ended question first. So if we were trying to find out, perhaps you didn't know that bit of information that you just told us about how he tried to get across the line a bunch of times. So what you might first start to do is just do a bit of exploration and say, hey, what was your biggest challenge? Um, you know, going for working with other people or getting the loan across the line or whatever it was. He might come back with 3 or 5 things in that response, and then you just drill down into that. Oh, I'd love to just focus on that, just that those knockbacks.
yeah,
I don't know what you would call them, but
yeah,
those we could just drill down into that particular area. And what I'll do is I'll give you a sentence starter if that's okay, just so we can drop in there nice and cleanly. Um, so what you might start the answer with is, we got knocked back time after time, and then go on to describe your experience of working with Greg.
yeah,
And so then they would say, and so then the testimonial would start with the soundbite, we got knocked back for a loan time and time again until I started working with Greg, and then go on to talk about the resolution of the story. So
uh,
just by using those little, what we call sentence starters, it allows us to just drill down into one section of the story that we know resonates with the audience. So it's that
yeah,
overlapping story component, and it gets a nice clean edit point. So because we're only after 3 grabs in a little testimonial, it's just that before picture, the after picture, and so what was the result? Got into the home, got the loan, and if you can get in the after picture, if you can get some form of quantifiable result in there. It might be the number of days that they got the loan in, for instance,
Yeah.
or the amount, perhaps, if that's okay to do. But anything where you can get a number in, specificity is really powerful in marketing. So
It's
in that
true.
after picture,
Numbers are really powerful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, an after picture, and then you would have the recommendation after you've resolved the story for the audience. We're all feeling warm and fuzzy. Now drop in the endorsement rather than coming out of the gate saying, "Hey, work with Greg. He's a great guy. Trust me."
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. So they have now we've went over what's a way that you can actually effectively get testimonials. How do you ask for them? How do you do that ask? How do you actually conduct it? How you can actually empower once you've conducted, while you're conducting it, how do you make it stronger in order to really like bring out that story, get those very, very strong snippets of audio that you can take, add together to paint the whole story, the before, the after, and the endorsement. Um, Now, when it comes to besides, aside from all that, what else would you recommend for somebody to be doing in order to empower their VSL or empower their marketing platform?
Mm. The one thing I would be trying to do is just really bake it into your systems and processes, all the way back to your initial prospecting call, for instance, if that's the way people come into your world. So, if, for instance, it might be for you, if we could get if we could get that across the line with these parameters in this time frame, would you be willing to give us a video testimonial? So
Yeah.
that would be something I would be saying right at the start. And there's no need to be afraid to say that too, because if there's a outcome that's baked into that and I want that outcome, then hell yeah, that's this, you're solving that problem for me. Of course I'll give you a video testimonial. And then you might just, if you wanted to, you could drop in there that, hey, it's just a short 15-minute interview, no preparation necessary, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I would be doing, is just setting that as an expectation at service right at the start. And then it makes that conversation of reaching out at the end much, much easier. Um, so that's one thing I would do. Um, the other thing is, really, once you've got that in the can, particularly video testimonials, is they're infinitely reusable. When we captured those initial testimonials in our beta group that we brought through 20 beta testers through that initial course launch, and we use them absolutely everywhere. We chop them into little blogs. We use them in our emails. We use them on our checkout pages. Um, around sales calls, in our webinar. So whenever we're talking about a particular topic, we're always able to then refer to a story, a customer story that was about the same thing, them
Mm.
having the reward. So I'm always just almost categorizing and going, okay, that's about that, that's about that, and either making a mental note or literally arranging them in some form of system. So when I'm talking about that, I've got those stories there that I can refer to, because we're really, as humans, storytelling goes back all the way back in our evolution, and we're really primed to be receptive to receiving information by stories, because it was pretty important back in the day when there was a saber-toothed tiger around the other side of the hill, kind of thing. So we're
Yeah.
very, very open to the delivery of information by story. So if you can, even when you're making a point, come out and make the point, tell the story, then talk about the reason why it works and add any statistics in at the end, rather than come out the gate with all of the technical information.
No, I love it. So stories are just a great way, anyways, because they drive emotion, and
Mm,
emotion is how we actually make decisions. So
yes. Yeah.
everything is based off of an emotional response. So there's the two main parts of our brain. One is our neocortex, which is like all the facts, figures, data, how we speak, how we can process information. But then we also have our limbic system, which is our limbic brain, kind of our primal animal brain, which drives emotions, right? But that's how
Mm,
we make decisions. So like every animal on the planet has the ability to make decisions, and it also has the ability to feel emotions. Cannot
mm,
speak, cannot understand facts, figures, and data like the neocortex. Too often people feel like, oh, if I tell them all this information about the product or this, that, the other, it's going to get them moved. And it doesn't. It drives no decision because they're like, oh, that's great. Like,
Yes.
I got to think about it, right? Because there was no emotional pull to get them to go. Stories, however, is
Yeah.
why the concept or this saying, story sell, is because
Yes.
story invokes emotion. Story gets people to feel something, and then that's what gets them to drive the decision-making process.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not quite as logical as we believe that we are, and we're always making those decisions
Yep.
based on the emotion. You said something right there too about it's an obvious error to make. Is you would think you could make more sales just by talking about the product, and it falls into a bit of that trap of inside out marketing where we're always talking about ourselves rather than entering the conversation that's going on in the prospect's mind and talking about their situation. There's a great saying, and I always forget. I really should work out who it's from, but it's customers don't buy from you because they understand your product. They buy from you because they feel understood. And if you apply that to yourself and your own buying decisions, you'll pretty quickly find that it rings true. I always reflect on that when I'm buying something, and I go, okay, what was the moment that I made the decision and kind of tipped over the line? And it's normally some little emotional hook that got me that I resonated with, that really it was the kernel of that buying decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And so, man, I appreciate this conversation. This has been great. So you've given a lot of marketing information, a lot of information that people can use in order to empower their VSL, or even start to like if you're haven't even started the process of a VSL, but you want to start it. I'm telling you, this is a great way to kind of get on that path. Start collecting a database of client reviews and testimonials,
Mm.
because it's always good to have, right? You
Yes.
could all it's like you just have them, because there's going to come a day when you're going to want to use them, and VSL is a great way to do it. You can also create a Google business page that you could start to have that all collated, and as people find you, because the goal is always to to transition into all warm market, or
Mm.
natural kind of organic reach, right?
Yep.
And the more people that see you and like do that, the more you'll get seen. So I highly recommend doing this, even if you're not doing a VSL currently. It'll help to
Mm.
be those
Mm.
beginning stages. But if anyone's interested in finding out more about marketing from you, or kind of seeing a little bit more about your online course that get better testimonials, what's a good way that they can reach out to you, John?
Yeah, feel free. LinkedIn's my playground most of the time, so feel free to reach out to John Hubbard on LinkedIn. You'll see, testimonials plastered all over my profile there, so you've got the right guy. My course is getbettertestimonials.com, so feel free to check out that. And if you'd like, I've got a script that's available for download, which is free, which is just testimonialscript.com, and it gives a bit of an outline of the principles behind that request framework, and also a finished script there, along with some little incentives that you can use. And you just reminded me of one of those, Greg, with your reviews. And reviews are a really great place to harvest testimonials from. So it could be reaching out to people that have given you reviews, or even endorsements in LinkedIn, and asking and saying, hey, would you mind if we did a quick 15-minute interview to capture your story? And the other way is you can actually bake that into your system. So one of the ones that I've seen work really well is I just call it a sad face, smiley face survey, which is when you're sending out an email to people at the end of the project. At the bottom of the email, you've got a sad face and a smiley face, and you say, "How do we do?" You know, click to let us know. Click on the sad face. Terrible. Excellent. And if they click on if they click on the terrible or the poor, then obviously you've got a job to do to go back and find out how you can improve your service. But if they
Yep.
click on the excellent, then it might be that we follow up with those people and say, hey, listen, would you be open to having a 15-minute chat on Zoom so I could capture your story?
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of ways that you could influence that. Like, man, it was so great talking to you. I'd love to just have a quick interview. I think your story is very inspirational, move some people. Uh,
Mm,
and it was great just catching up with you. So I would love to take some time, like 15 minutes, just to kind of capture that for other people, because I think that you could actually inspire some people, or influence them.
yeah.
Would you be open to that? Right. And then
Yes.
most people are going to be like, yeah, yeah, you want to hear from me? You're like, yeah, I
Yeah.
do. You
They
know?
do. That's my experience too. Is most people, and you could call it the law of reciprocity. Is if you've helped them, they want to help you, and they want to see you succeed. It's not the reason that they go radio silent when you ask them for a testimonial. It's because you make it too hard for them to give you one. Is what I found is the problem. So yeah, if you make it easy, you find. I had a lady that a couple of weeks ago that had three. She messaged me. She had three came in one day, and she'd been scared to ask for years. Very accomplished business person, just had a mental barrier around asking. And she was rapt, gave me this message. Three have come in one day. I can't believe it. But yeah, it wasn't same reason. She just made it easy for them to give her positive feedback, and now she's she's got a page full of testimonials.
You also think about it like this. Think about it like this. For those of you like they're in a sales business, like insurance, where a client could potentially do a chargeback or cancel their policy. You do this with a client a week after you sat with them and you help them with the product. This is another, like, you're making that business more sticky when they're coming in and saying all these great things about you, right? Or about the process or all that. It's making it more likely that they're going to stay on the books and stay with you, and they're going to be more memorable about you as an overall experience, a sales experience with you. So this is great. Like, there's so many nuggets in this specific podcast and so much value that you provided, John. I appreciate you taking the time and just helping everybody. This is great.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Greg.
So last question I ask all my guests, which you probably are aware of right now. You have the opportunity to sit with, learn from, break bread with three different individuals, anyone in history, living or deceased. Who would those three be and why?
This was so hard. I'm a big fan of particularly ancient history, and so my thought process went to, well, I'd like to speak to him just so I could see what it was like back then. In Assyria or Persia or something like that. But I had to come down just to the big names. So Alexander the Great would be at the top of
That's a
my
good one.
list. And then as I went through the I like where big changes have occurred in history, like, for instance, Charles Darwin and so on. But there was a guy that came just before Charles Darwin called Charles Lyell, who was a geologist. And it was the work that he did on geology that inspired natural selection. And that inspired. So I would like to speak to him, and because I think that was a major breakthrough in human thought. And then the last person would be George Harrison from the Beatles.
Nice.
I reckon he'd tell a good story. I heard him telling a story once about how the first remote control he saw was at Elvis's house. And so I reckon he's probably got a few more like that, which would be very entertaining.
I love it. Those are three great ones. I love them. So thank you so much, John, for coming on and taking your time just to share your experiences and your wisdom, especially when it comes to marketing. This was a great one. If you watched it now, I know you got value, and this is super valuable in terms of what you can apply to your business right now. Okay. So I need you to do me a favor. I need you to share this with somebody else that can also get value from it. I need you to share this with somebody that can change your perspective and maybe implement some of these strategies into their business and make an impact. You could have influence on somebody else's business just by sharing this. Take 60 seconds to rate, review, subscribe, and share, but it means the world to both John and myself. So this has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time.